never told you, I serve as part of an interdisciplinary hospice team. This is a team made up of clinical case managers, physicians, nursing assistants, social workers, a chaplain, some of you know, physical, speech, and occupational therapists, and a dedicated group of volunteers, some of whom are here today. I see two of them over here, and some others who are part of this fellowship and who are not able to be here today. When people hear the word hospice, it's inevitably paired with the word dying, death, of course. But this association isn't entirely fair, because the work of the hospice team is really about supporting quality of life. It just happens to be focused on the final stage. People are prompted to call hospice after they've had a conversation with their medical provider that sometimes includes the words, "There's nothing more we can do." And then we work together to figure out what we can do for the individual facing the end of life, as well as for the people who love them. I often wish that if everybody could access the kind of services that hospice provides, we would all be much healthier individuals, families, and communities. Because hospice is a philosophy and a holistic approach to well-being. And hopefully we can apply some of its core principles throughout our lives, not just at the very end. Before I go on any further, I want to acknowledge that it's Mother's Day. I want to thank my mother for coming today. And I wish that I had listened to her more all the times she said, "You should never wait to start a project the day before the deadline," because that's what I did, and I'm really tired today. I got an email from the Service Planning Committee a few months ago asking if I'd be willing to speak on May 10th, suggesting maybe I could talk about something related to end of life. I said, sure, I'd be happy to, but isn't it Mother's Day? Is that really the vibe that we want to go for? Aging, death, and dying. Don't you think that could be a little weird? I mean, even for a UU service? But we decided to go with it. And what better day than Mother's Day to remember and honor that we did not come into this world on our own. There were others who had a major role in it, and if we've made it this far, there were others who tended to our needs and helped us along the way. They might have been our mothers, they might have been our fathers, our grandparents, or other important people in our lives, and usually it was more than one. We recently, as a community here, welcomed little Orion. I talked to William and asked if they were going to come today, and he said, "We'll have to see how the night goes." So I guess it didn't go very well. It's exciting to celebrate the beginning of a life and to look forward to watching little Orion grow, to discover who he will become, and to watch his parents step into their new roles with such commitment and love for him. And it's an intense amount of care to sustain life at the very beginning. The kind of care that keeps us awake at night, requires reorganizing of our schedules, our career plans, our bedrooms, and our budgets. There are new things to worry about around every corner that we'd never even imagined. It's an incredible responsibility, and it's also a great joy. When people are preparing to become parents, they read books about what to expect, they make plans, they stock up on all kinds of supplies, and when they leap into this new territory, people celebrate and wish them well in their adventure. Some even offer to babysit if they're really lucky. The fact that they're frequently sleep-deprived and generally quite haggard and have moments of anxiety when they feel like they don't know what they're doing is all part of the package. And we consider this the norm because we all know that this is how life begins. At the other end of the life cycle, the care we need is often just as intense, whether it's for an hour, a month, or an extended and unpredictable period of years. The same challenges are faced by the people who care for us, except that everything is much bigger now. Our bodies, the laundry, the bills, the amount of stuff we've crammed into our closets and attics and barns, as Hans was referencing earlier. If Orion had been born 100 years ago, he might have expected to live to the ripe old age of 52. With our current ability to treat emergencies and chronic disease, it's quite reasonable now to expect that he may live well into his 9th decade or beyond. And while we fully accept that the beginning of life is a time of physical and emotional vulnerability, requiring attentive caregiving, we live in denial most of the time that for the vast majority of us, a time will come when we need the same kind of tender care that he is receiving right now. We don't like thinking about this possibility because above all, we value our competence. It has defined who we are. We cling to it from the very first moment we push our parents away, attempting to dress ourselves and say, I can do it myself, even though our pants are on backwards and inside out. We spend the majority of the rest of our lives fiercely defending a state of mind that is arguably a short-sighted figment of our imagination. We are never really as self-reliant as we think we are, yet we are driven to preserve the myth. Dr. Gawande, who I know many of you have been reading about and hearing about on NPR, is a great hero of contemporary medicine. He writes a lot about the resulting dilemma. He says, our reverence for independence takes no account of the reality of what happens in life. Sooner or later, independence will become impossible. Serious illness or infirmity will strike. It is as inevitable as sunset. And then a new question arises. If independence is what we live for, what do we do when it can no longer be sustained? Our independence is inextricably linked to our identity. When we consider that we may someday lose parts of our minds or control over our bodies, it's a threat to our core sense of self. We fear that if we lose it, we won't know who we are anymore, and no one will know us. We wonder, who will take care of us? Who will be there? Compound that uncertainty with our feelings about not wanting to be a burden, not wanting to leave our homes, and it's frightening for most of us. We don't like thinking about it, and so we try not to. But when we avoid thinking and talking about our end-of-life care, we're ultimately avoiding having a voice, requiring others to guess and second-guess for us. If we accept that our need for some degree of help in our final years is simply a fact of life, a developmental stage in the continuum, will that help us prepare for it in a more practical way? Would it change what we're doing collectively and culturally to create a healthier community for aging? I want to take a quick survey here. How many people in this room have completed an advance directive? You know, Hans, it's like I paid you today. You're giving me so many leads and setups. It's awesome. Thank you for coming. I'll get there in a second. How many people have thought about completing an advance directive, but it's still on the to-do list? Okay. So an advance directive is a document in which you choose a healthcare proxy, somebody who will be able to speak for you when you're not able to, and you go through a series of questions that you think about. Do you want to have life-sustaining treatment in different situations? And we brought some today in case you want to take one home. For those of you who have completed an advance directive, you've already thought about the possibility that a situation may someday arise when you may not be able to speak for yourself. You've selected a healthcare proxy who will step in for you and make decisions on your behalf. Hopefully you've told that person that you selected them, because sometimes people don't. And you've thought about things like whether or not you want to be kept on life support if you can't breathe on your own, and a lot of other questions too. People generally tend not to fear being dead or even the process of dying itself as much as they fear the period of decline and potential suffering that might lead up to it. Advance directives are extremely helpful, and I encourage everyone to complete them, and I will do mine soon. Really, they're just the tip of the iceberg in terms of conversations we should be having about our end-of-life care to help us avoid the suffering that we fear. Gawande talks about the importance of clarifying our breaking point. This means really knowing what's most important to us and to our quality of life, and sharing with the people who will be speaking for us when we can't. It will help guide decisions about our care, because there will inevitably come a time when we might want to shift gears from seeking curative treatment interventions to focusing on our comfort and spending time with the people we care about. He illustrates the importance of this with the story of a daughter who's her father's healthcare proxy and realizes the night before he's scheduled for a surgery to remove his spinal cord tumor that she doesn't really have any idea what he would want. What's amazing about this story is that she also works as a palliative care specialist. This is what she does all day long. She talks to people about end-of-life choices. And she realizes she finds herself having avoided the conversation with her father for the same reasons we all do, because it's hard and it's uncomfortable and it's emotional. But she figures this out just in the nick of time. She goes back, she talks with him and says, "Dad, I need to understand how much you're willing to go through to have a shot at being alive. And what level of being alive is tolerable to you?" She says, "We had this quite agonizing conversation where he said, well, if I'm able to eat chocolate ice cream and watch football on TV, then I'm willing to stay alive. I'm willing to go through a lot of pain if I have a shot at this." She was completely surprised by this answer, but the conversation proved critical. When there was a serious complication the next day with his surgery, and she had to make a quick decision about whether to stop treatment, which would mean that he would die immediately, or authorize another intervention, she was able to clearly ask the surgeons, if he survives the operation, will he still be able to eat chocolate ice cream and watch TV? And they said yes. And because they had talked about his breaking point, he had made the decision for her. It wasn't her choice to make. And that's what we can do to help our loved ones be our advocates. Think about it for a moment. Do you know what your own breaking point would be? What's your version of chocolate ice cream and football? Do you know what compromises you'd be willing to make or not make for it? And does the person who will be speaking for you, do they know that too? Would they be guessing? Might they not be correct in their guess? There are lots of tools to help you think about your breaking point and think about your end-of-life choices for those of you who aren't sure where to start. And this is one of them. This is a deck of Go Wish cards. It sounds corny, and it kind of is corny, but it's based on the Living Will document of the 5 wishes, which addresses your personal, emotional, and spiritual concerns, as well as your medical decisions. There's many ways to use it, but the solitaire version, which I recommend starting with, involves sorting the deck into categories of things most important to me, moderately important to me, and not important. And then you take your most important pile and you talk about it with the people who care about you. And I'll just show you a couple of them. It has things like, to keep my sense of humor, moderately important to me. To be free from anxiety, that would be awesome, but I think since I have so much all the time, it's probably not going to go away when I'm dying. Not dying alone, important to some people, not so important to other people. To be mentally aware. This can help our healthcare proxy make decisions about how much pain medication is going to be the right amount for us. Because the right amount for us is the amount that alleviates our pain, but helps us to stay alert if that's of value to us. This gives you an idea of the kinds of conversations you could have with yourself. So I'll have these with me if you'd like to take a look at them later. The core message I want you to take away today is to think about what would happen if we accepted that our need for some degree of help in our final years is simply a fact of life, a developmental stage in the continuum. Would that help us prepare in a more practical way? Would it change what we're doing collectively and culturally and create a healthier community? I feel like I said this already. Did I? It's just because I read it this morning, sorry. Instead of being afraid and avoidant, could we invest our energy more productively in cultivating our interdependence? Communities around the country have been asking this same question and forging a new path by rejecting the idea of moving to retirement homes when they need assistance. Instead, they're setting up neighborhood cooperatives that bring services into their homes, which is where most of us really want to live. This village movement, as it's called, creates community networks that simulate the supportive qualities of the extended families of the past. If we really want to have some quality control over our end-of-life care, we need to challenge the myth of independence and re-examine the way we give and receive help. In spite of our very best intentions, our attempts to support our loved ones as they age are often met with much resistance. Most of us in this room have experienced this at some time. Power struggles abound. We're worried about their safety. We don't want them to fall. We don't want them to cook anymore because they might burn down the house. The checkbook is totally out of control. We need to get them off the road before they kill somebody. These are all valid concerns and very difficult situations to handle. But being effective care partners with the people we love means thinking beyond risk management. Safety is certainly a priority, but it's not usually our loved one's priority. It's kind of like having a teenager. When we take things away without offering alternative solutions that support what they value most, we're responding to our needs not theirs, and this often backfires. We will be more effective and probably less stressed out if we previously had breaking point conversations, if we know their version of chocolate ice cream and can make other related care decisions that support its importance. I have come to know the people in this room as being very service-oriented and community-minded, very willing to offer help, but I'm not sure how comfortable any of us really are deep down with receiving it, especially when it would expose our vulnerability to ask. Let's challenge our self-judgment, which is simply a social construct, and remember that acceptance of help is an exchange of energy and trust in our relationship with another. This is also our great covenant. It's the other half. Dying is an opportunity to complete the circle of giving and receiving love. Caring for people who are dying is an opportunity to honor their inherent worth and dignity. For too many people, it's the first time in their adult lives when they've experienced care and tenderness. It's a time to respect the interdependent web of existence of which we all are a part. The process is a restructuring of the self and of all our relationships. We could not have been born without letting go. We could not really live without letting go, and we cannot die without letting go. I've had the privilege of being present with a lot of people who are dying, and I believe there is significantly more to us than our collected competencies. That's not all of what we are. And before we go have coffee, I'll tell you how my 7-year-old nephew explained this concept to me one summer night in a tent. My Dutch grandfather, who I call Opa, lived with me from the time he was 94 until his death at 98. My nephew, his great-grandson, came to visit us every summer for a week in August, starting when he was 4. This was a great treat for us, and he and Opa became great buddies. They played lawn darts together, they went swimming, they did a lot of coloring and puzzles. There was a period of time where they were right at the same level of interest. Because Spencer lives far away, they hardly ever saw each other in between the visits in the summer, and each year Spencer grew up a little bit more, and Opa's dementia progressed a little bit more. There were a lot of changes during Opa's last year of life, and when Spencer arrived that summer, he walked into our house, and his face went white. He took one look at Opa, and he backed up against the wall. I'm not kidding. Like that. As if in shock. I reassured him that everything was okay, that Opa looked a little different, but there was nothing to be afraid of. But I could see in his eyes that he wasn't buying it, and he asked if he could go play outside. A few nights later, we camped out in the yard, which is one of our traditions. After we got settled into the tent, he said, "Aunt Julie, some people would say that Opa is stupid." I said, "I guess you're right. Some people would. What do you think?" He said, "Well, he asks the same questions over and over. He makes really annoying sounds, and he does irritating things." I said, "I know, I've been living with him for 4 years, and that's all really true." Then he said, "He kind of reminds me of Allie when she didn't know how to do anything." Allie is his little sister. He was 3 when she was born, and he wasn't very impressed with her abilities when she first arrived. I said, "I guess they do have some things in common." Conversation shifted back to camping, where we might move the tent tomorrow. Could we go to a real campground instead of the backyard? And where did I go camping when I was 7? I said, "The first time I went camping was with Opa." He said, "Opa knows how to camp?" I said, "Sure. Opa learned to camp when he was a young boy. He traveled all over Holland and Germany and lots of other countries with tents and camping gear all strapped to his bicycle." "Seriously?" "Yeah," I said, "I can show you pictures tomorrow." I could tell he was trying to imagine his 97-year-old great-grandfather in his current condition riding a bike, and this just wasn't coming to him easily. Since we were there staring at the sky and it was a really nice summer night, we didn't have the fly on the tent. I told him, "See those satellites? Opa made the parts for those satellites and space telescopes." And he said, "Really?" And his skepticism turned to amazement. He was quiet for a while, and I thought he'd fallen asleep. I was just about to get my book out and my flashlight, and he said, "Aunt Julie, does Opa even know who I am?" 8-year-olds know when you're withholding even in a dark tent. So I said, "If you mean, does he remember your name, or that you live in New York, and that your daddy is my brother?" He said, "No, he doesn't know that anymore." We agreed that it made us sad that he'd forgotten so much. We had a conversation then about brain batteries running out and not being rechargeable, and memory cards and how they fill up and you have to delete stuff. Then he said, "Opa's like the opposite of Allie. She's getting bigger and he's getting smaller. She's getting more teeth than he doesn't have anymore. She's learning things, and he's unlearning things." I thought this was a pretty wise observation, the unlearning of Opa. And then he summed it all up. "And Aunt Julie, it's our job to take care of him because we're his family. And even if his memory is all used up, and he doesn't know our names. Allie didn't know our names when she was born either, but everybody comes with a hard drive. And I think love is one of the automatic programs." Thank you so much for your patience. Thank you to all the people who helped with conversations that led to this talk today and for our love.